It took a while. A very long while. About 2.5 months, so to speak, of video recording time. So, the 70-year-old challenge of 2023 is done. And of course, I did quite a bit of reviews for it. But I assume more people will basically remember me for the amount of videos I basically recorded for this one. Now, I'll note that before I actually, started doing these, reviews for, the 70-year-olds of this year, I wasn't intending to actually review every single game from, this year. But, for the most part, that's what I basically managed to do. At first, of course, I reviewed, about 9 of the games were about 50% of this, successful entries. After that, with, less than half the entries basically left to, review, I decided, why not, let's get through them. And then to top things off, I felt, why not just go for 100% and get everything else recorded. I went for all the failed 70-year-olds as well as, the completed ones, and just got them all done. And this is noteworthy because only in 2013, I think, has this ever been done. And that's basically done by, Game Hunter, or the Uber Hunter, as it's basically, it's probably called on YouTube. But, for the most part, it's done. And I figure it's time to cap off this playlist. Alright, so, before I do anything else, I'm just going to point this out here that if you want to obviously have, your game recorded for me, like your 70-year-old game, in 2024, bear in mind that you can contact me to actually, let me know about your game via this address, roxyman@gmail.com. And I'm throwing this out here because next year in 2024, I'm not going to do this again. While I'm quite happy I basically recorded all these games, I have to say at the same time, I'm not really, fond of the idea of, going through, every single one of the games in 2024 either. There is a lot of good games, don't get me wrong, but there's also quite a few ones that were, not really worth my time or I think really anyone else's time to record. And hopefully, the authors will benefit from it, but there wasn't really much to show in a lot of these games, and, especially the incomplete ones for sure. Alright, so, I just want to, describe a few things about these, submissions from, this year. And, sort of compare it to, past years, I guess, because I do have at least some insight in, how, the past years basically were. It's worth knowing that this year, and I guess, as we sort of expected, there's a lot more, browser-based games than there were, in past years. In past years, there's a lot more executable games, and you basically, to download the game and, unlock, an executable and just, play it that way. But this year, there's basically a lot more browser-based games. And that, of course, helps with accessibility, means you can basically play it anywhere, possibly on your phone even. And, that's neither good or bad, but it's just worth throwing out there. Outside of that, a lot of these games were also done in, real time as opposed to, the traditional, turn-based. There were still quite a few, turn-based games and, you move, I move sort of ideas. But at the same time, there's a lot more, active real-time, elements to, these, 70-year-olds as well. But there wasn't a whole lot of progression in a lot of these games either. So, it's more or less a lot of these games, you start from scratch every single time as opposed to, you build on your runs every single time, which is something I'm really glad to basically see. It means a lot more people basically have an idea what a roguelite basically is, at least compared to, a Rogue-lite. So, there is that to basically say about, the entries here. There was a few games that, didn't really fit the criteria of, what roguelike really is, but I didn't find them, that many, to be honest, so I'm quite happy to say that as well. And there's just a lot of satisfactory 70-year-olds basically to play. Not to mention quite a few, ones that are basically worth, mentioning in, the days to come, and, in years to come. To sort of, emphasize this, this is not an exhaustible list that I basically have right here, but here's some of the games that basically I'm going to be mentioning personally myself because they sort of stuck with me from this year. And this is sort of throw this out here. There's basically 18 games listed here. And I never mentioned this many, like, 70 RLs, like, from any specific year before. So, yeah, there's a lot of, like, good titles, basically, to, like, mention here. So, good job on the developers, basically, listed here, and hopefully it'll be, like, as many as, like, as this, next year as well. Alright, so, with this all basically out of the way, some, like, final thoughts, basically, to throw out here before, like, we basically finish off the videos here. For the most part, I'm quite happy with the reviewing process, and I think that, it still serves its purpose, the, like, way it's basically done right now. But one change that was basically done was the fact that, like, Darren's being a lot more active in basically removing people, or not removing people, but removing games from being reviewed. And that basically resulted in a few games only getting, like, one reviewer, sometimes two, but I'm more or less focused on a lot of these games that basically only have, like, one reviewer basically for them. I'll note that one game here, The Grind, was basically one of these games that only had one reviewer. And I sort of already mentioned this, but I feel like, I should mention again that this is one of those games that I think sort of fell through the cracks due to, like, how the games were basically, like, removed. And it's worth knowing that basically in, like, next year, in, like, the years to come, it'd probably be a good idea to basically have at least 2 reviewers per game. Possibly, like, if, like, time permits, you should basically have it so the system basically, these games might get removed, like, partially, but if there's basically time to basically review the games at the end, like, we basically had, like, half a month basically to, like, do reviews in, and we could have actually, like, gone back to some of these games, like The Grind, for example, and thrown out, like, an extra review for it to get, like, 2 reviews. The idea basically about The Grind here, if I was basically the reviewer for this game, it's worth knowing I would have basically boosted up the aesthetics to at least a 2 or 3. I would have boosted up innovation to a 2 or 3, depending on how generous I basically am. I probably would have left fun at 1 because I'm not really a fan of horror games, but that's more or less on the game, like, me as a player not really liking this type of genre, but nothing really on the game itself. Maybe I might boost it up to 2, I'm not really sure. And, that just shows that just, like, 3 places would probably possibly would have, like, boosted up the score quite a bit on The Grind. Maybe I would have had, like, a 3 in aesthetics, 3 in, like, innovation, and 2 in fun. And that would have, like, wildly changed, like, the scoring for this game here compared to a lot of the other ones. And just to sort of, like, justify why I basically would do this, when I basically played this game, I found it had, like, decent enough, like, graphics, like, to basically see what was basically going on. The controls worked just well enough. Quite happy about them. Innovation-wise, you may find this, like, surprising to hear, but while the theme was basically not that, like, novel, what is novel is the fact that there was procedural generation in a horror game. And you might say, like, there's all these Space Marine games that, like, have procedural generation, like Doom RL and such, or even a new Quest Morphus is basically coming out. But it's worth knowing that for this type of game, like a jump scare game, there isn't a whole lot of games that basically have procedural generation. So this actually is pretty novel. I don't know if that's worth 3 points, but it is worth 2. So just to throw it out there. And I could see it being quite fun. So, yeah, I could actually boost this up to 2. I don't think I would, but, just to throw it out there. And, yeah, it's worth knowing that if I was basically to suggest something to Darren, it'd probably be, like, keep the system basically as is, but if you have time, like, after doing all the scoring and such, basically have, like, a sort of, like, partial deprioritization method where games that are basically, like, only have, like, 1 review can basically get reviewed again. They get that second review. And maybe, like, if there's basically time still after that, you might keep going, but I think 2 reviews is probably, like, good enough basically to, like, decide if a game's basically, like, not worth reviewing. And I'm not basically there's probably other games as well that possibly could have, like, reviewed a second reviewer, but I just found, like, the grind here to be the most prominent one because it was the one that basically, like, stuck out to me. Alright, so there's not basically a whole lot more to basically say other than see you guys next year. I do intend to basically come back for the 70 Years of 2024. But, other than that, contact me by that email I basically listed. I probably should have closed it, but, whatever. Let's just go to my history here. Go to DFuxa Plays. And there's the email address again. You can also contact me, by the way, via Steam if you, like, have my my Steam account, or my Steam account, but, you can contact me by like, DFuxa on, like, Steam. You can also go to the Rogue-lite group, which basically I'm a moderator of. And you can basically just leave a message here and I'll be able to see it. Various ways basically to contact me. You can also contact me in Discord. Or like through like, the Rogue-lite Reddit as well. Alright, so I think I said enough. Hope you guys basically enjoyed the videos, and take care.